of our other visiting scholars. Where is she? There she is. Dr. Mariko, sorry, my mind went blank. Okada is presenting next week. The title of her presentation is Dancing in Motion, Untangling the Framing of Geisha in the Early Cinematic Records, and that will be in
Thank you so
1010
much.
upstairs. Tonight, there is a film, Baragaki, Unbroken Samurai at the State Theater. So if you're interested in samurai movies, we have a really interesting series going on right now. That movie tonight is at the State Theater, but there's other flyers that tell about the whole movie series. And of course, you can find that online. This film tonight depicts the life of a rural commoner who mastered the martial arts and became a leader in the militia in Kyoto during the Tokugawa period. The film's tickets can be purchased at the website. Next week, we have a screening of The Emperor in August. That's 7:00. That's also at the State Theater. This film takes place during the final days of World War II and depicts the intrigue surrounding the emperor. Some of the actors within the government advocate for surrender, and others desperately try and push for an end to the struggles. That you can also find tickets on the website and social media pages. Now, for those of you who are at the webinar, I just want you to know that your webcams and your microphones are muted for this activity. So if you want to participate in Q&A, you need to write in the chat feature. And live transcription is automatically turned on. So if you want to turn that off, you have to hit the closed caption button on your little tray. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Sachiko Kita. She and I are 10-year colleagues and also very good friends. So I'm super overjoyed that she's here. I am a gender-based violence researcher, and Dr. Kita and I met when I was giving a talk at a conference that she was helping set up. And I said, can I meet with any of your faculty on campus? And she says, I'm doing gender-based violence research. So we met, that was almost 10 years ago now. So that's great. A little bit about Dr. Kita. She is a certified nurse midwife by training, by clinical training, and a PhD. She is, during her midwifery practice, she began to notice that the women were struggling as much with mental health as they were with the childbirth experience. So she became very interested in mental health and moved into a journey understanding gender-based violence. Quick note, why am I using the word gender-based violence? This is not intimate partner violence only. Gender-based violence includes a variety of violence against people because of their gender. It might be things like stalking. It could be sexual assault. It could be intimate partner violence, or all of the above. Unfortunately, a lot of people experience many forms of violence. Dr. Kita's work is also very interesting because she's interested in intergenerational violence or multiple violence that occurs in the family, where it might be that a person who's committing violence against the wife might also be abusing a child, something like that. So, and what's astounding about Dr. Kita's work is because the rigor of her methods make her publications so persuasive that they get picked up in the media and they get brought to the legislature. And so I believe she's going to talk a little bit more about that social change, the need for social change, and why it's so hard, and how scholarship may feed into that. So I'm thinking that she'll talk a little bit more about that. Because she's such a flexible scholar, her work crosses some disciplines. So while she's, sort of technically in nursing, or maybe it's psychology, there's policy implications. Sometimes she's doing public health work. Sometimes she's doing cross-cultural work and anthropology with me. So she does a wide variety of work. Last thing I want to say is she's currently a faculty at Temple University in Tokyo, and we're hoping that she gets an amazing job there because she's qualified to be at a much higher rank. So if any of you know the system of promotion in Japan, you will know how hard it is to be an associate professor or a full professor. And that's the qualifications that Dr. Kita brings to us today. So enough.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Denise, for your kind and great introductions. I'm very honored. Okay, so thank you so much for the coming this lecture today. And I'm Sachiko Kita, the visiting scholar at the Center for Japanese Studies. So the title of this lectures is Do the Victims and the Survivors, the Voices Reach the Society, the Historical Change in the Support System on the Gender-Based Violence in Japan. So do you know that fact, the penal code on the sexual violence has been amended in the 2017 for the first time in the 110 years. That is so the dramatical and historical change. And that is a breaking news in Japan. But unfortunately, due to the limited, the media coverage, somehow. So the many Japanese people that still don't know, that don't know it. So, that I know that many of you are rooted in Japan, and many of you that are familiar with or that are interested in the Japanese culture. So that's why I wanted you to know it in these lectures. And also that I want, that I'm actually that I know the background and that I know the backstories, the behind the amendment, because I joined into the the study group to make the evidence. So so I want to talk about the background and the backstories behind the amendment as well. So before my lecture start, do you know her? Do you know her, right? So she is one of the most respectful and famous activist in the field of the sexual violence. And she's a freelance journalist, and she is also survivors of the sexual violence, being raped by the very powerful senior journalist who was close to the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. And she bravely disclosed that in the public in the 2017, but the society that criticized and blame her so much, like especially the SNS, like that she want to be the famous. She want to make the money throughout the suing, or something, or everybody, many people that criticize about how she's wearing, kind of she wearing that. So you wear something like you wear like this. So that's why you got the things happened to you or something like that. And so, but she never give up. She never give up. She never give up. That keep telling her stories and suing him. And eventually, just recently, 2023, that she won the trial. Then she sparked. She's one of the biggest contributors to the spark the Me Too movement in Japan. And she published a book about her experiences and the process of investigation and a trial. And also that she made a documentary film recently, and that's very good news recently. But the her documentary film was nominated at the Academy Award. So if you are interested in the her interview in English, please scan the QR code and watch it later. Okay. So first of all, I want to introduce myself, what I'm doing, then briefly, then also that I want to talk about the general concept, general information of sexual violence, because some of you that, don't know, that is not familiar with the sexual violence issue. So then the final I talk the historical change in the penal code of the sexual violence in Japan. So let me introduce myself. So that it's very nice to meet you once again. So that I'm Sachiko, the visiting scholar at University of Michigan and the Temple University Japan campus faculties members. And until that I came to Michigan, I have worked at the University of Tokyo Department of Family Nursing as assistant professor and junior associate professor, senior lecturers in there for about 9 years. Then at the time that I met Denise, actually the University of Tokyo that invited her to be to be the speaker, then that's how we met. So my research interest is pretty much gender-based violence, especially the intimate personal violence and the child abuse in the family. So I have been conducting so many studies from the multiple angles, such as its impact on the IPB during pregnancy and its impact on the maternal child health, or the parenting behaviors such as, abusive parenting behaviors, and the family policy victimization, which means the co-occurrence of the multiple types of violence, such as intimate personal violence, child abuse, and elder abuse in the family. And also the trauma recovery after gender-based violence. I want to talk about it later, a little bit, our findings and what we are doing there. And also the perpetrators of the IBB and child abuse and the child suicide attempt at self-harm, which is a self-directed violence, Okay. So here is my journey. My career has been shaped with consistent and high passion and motivation to help out the victims and the violence. And the DV prevention law was enacted for the first time in the 2001 in Japan. Then at that time, I was the undergraduate student. When I knew the fact, the women itself became the major reason for the being abused. So I was so shocked. Then I strongly, thought I wanted to help the abused women. That's why I chose to become the nurse midwife. Then I went to the graduate school to be the nurse midwife, and after I got the satisfied nurse midwife license, I started to work at the Omori Red Cross Hospital, and which is close to Haneda and the Kawasaki area. That area is at the time is kind of famous famous and very dangerous and the road and the socioeconomics area. So I wanted to help out the social struggled the pregnant woman. So that's why I chose this hospital. Then at the time, I introduced IPB screening during pregnancy at the antenatal clinic, and also I conducted the survey for pregnant women to identify the prevalence of IPB during pregnancy, intimate partner violence during pregnancy, and its risk factors. Actually, it was my first, study, and published the paper in the international journal. And throughout the experience, that I thought I wanted to develop, or change society, or develop an effective intervention system to to meet with the diversity holistic need amongst the abused women. So that's why I decided to be the researcher. Then I entered in the PhD program at University of Tokyo, and I actually that when I was the second year, I got my baby, the Diddy, and I got the PhD with the 1 year old baby. Then after that, I started to work at the University of Tokyo, and for that kind of 9 years. Okay, here's my career. And let me introduce our multicultural study on the trauma recovery project. Then we call the My Story. Actually, in the 2017, the Professor Denise Saint announced established the team. And I'm one of board members. And My Story that has the GBB researchers from the 13 countries. Then we have the international lab, and we conduct cross-cultural studies. And based on to identify the more holistic the trauma recovery process that among the survivors of the gender-based violence, and to develop the clinical relevant and the gender cultures type the specific the interventions like a care guidebook that which can be used for the survivors and providers to enhance their holistic recovery. Then I want to introduce one of our findings, because I thought you may be interested in it. And so we conducted the surveys, the cross-cultural surveys in the 6 countries, the US, Iceland, Finland, Japan, Greece, Turkey. And we divided the 6 countries into the 2 types of the cultures, individualist cultures and the collectivist cultures. And the individualist cultures includes the US, Iceland, Finland. The collectivist cultures include Japan, Greece, Turkey. So that we wanted to compare and identify the differences of the trauma recovery pathway between the 2 types of the cultures. And that is very interesting. And we are so excited about that, because that Denise, do you remember that we analyzed the data that in Japan, and we hugged each other. We're so excited about the result. That's the individualist cultures, individualist survivors. The psychological symptoms, the increase their internal barriers like shamed, freezing, then also the internal stigma that they blame themselves, they are the failures, then also the increase the social conflict, then decrease the social decrease the social support, then decrease the trauma recovery. So we found out that the individual survivors are always feel the pressure to be the strong and to be independent. So that if the women, such a women have the psychological distress for a long time, that they blame themselves. And also that not only that they blame themselves, and it's like that I'm not strong enough, I'm not independent enough, and that also that not only themselves but also the people around them, they also blame them, they criticize, that you are not strong enough, kind of things. So that is a major kind of cause of their suffering. In the process of the trauma recovery. On the other hand, the collectivist cultures pathway is so different, and the result show that the physical symptoms that have the main roles to seek help or disclose their distress among the survivors of the collectivist cultures, like physical symptoms and decrease the social conflict, is more accessible in the society, and increase the social support and increase the trauma recovery. So throughout the interviews with the collectivist Japanese survivors, the Japanese survivors always express so many physical symptoms, headache, shoulder pain, the back pain or a feet cold or something like that. So that they cannot express the psychological symptoms to slit because it slit, the social harmony. So that instead of that, they express the physical symptoms, and actually it works to to be able to gain the social support and increase the social, trauma recovery. So that is very different. Okay, so I want to talk about the sexual violence in the general. So what is the sexual violence? So the sexual violence is any sexual act, attempt to obtain the sexual act or others act directed against the person sexually using the coercion by any person regardless of their relationship to the victims in any settings. So to summarize, any sexual activities without the consent is a sexual violence. So there are so many that, sexual violence is so diverse, includes both acts that cause directly the physical harm or those that do not. So it includes, sexual abuse, sexual rape, stalking, the cyber attacking, and so on. There's so many. And however, so no matter what the person doing its crime, that, if the recipient that say, oh, that he or she does not consent, it is a sexual violence. So here is a lifetime prevalence of the sexual violence in the world. In 1/2 of the women and about 1 in 3 men have experienced sexual violence in their lifetime. So the sexual violence itself is a very common issue. Then also the sexual violence itself, the impact, that have the enormous, the financial and social impact on the society. So here is a prevalence of sexual violence in Japan. So according to the Cabinet Equality Bureau's Cabinet Office, the government survey, 1 in 40 women, 7% have the experience sexual violence in their lifetime. So that it is a much lower, compared to that of, the worldwide report. But it doesn't mean, Japan is a country with less sexual violence, because that prevalence is very underestimated, and because of the lack of knowledge, lack of recognition, and then also stereotypes and the survivors, have the fear or the hesitant to report their experience. So that's why, the rate is very low. So perpetrators of the sexual violence is often someone that victims not. So the majority of the perpetrators, 70%, are someone close to the victims, such as the dating partners, marriage partners, and ex-partner, something like that. Then the 6% of the female victims and the 70% of the male victims have never sought help for anybody. So here is a list of the reasons for the not seeking help. And that is slightly different between the genders. But the number 1 reason is that that I was too embarrassed to tell anybody. So like a Japanese cultural shame, And also I thought that I was a patient, I would be okay. Or I thought it would be not helpful to talk to anyone about it because of lack of social support and lack of the knowledge in a society. So the survivors, many of survivors are afraid to be criticized or to blame themselves by the society or the people, the people around them. And also I thought I would be the bad. I seemed bad in the eyes of the public, the second day, social harmony, kind of things. So I want to explain especially the particular phenomena of the sexual violence, sexual grooming. So have you heard the sexual grooming, the term? So because I want to explain that a little bit because that is very related to, related to the change in the penal code. So grooming is happened a lot in almost all the sexual violence. So grooming is when somebody builds a relationship and a trust and an emotional connection with the victims. Then so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. So the perpetrators, the often, is a very friendly and try to have the relationship first. Then they manipulate the victim target and finally abuse them. That is a typical the phenomenon of the sexual violence. And the grooming is frequently used happened for especially the child and the young people. It's more the vulnerable population, and it is also used. It's also often used for the adult in the hierarchical relationship, such as employers and employees, or the senior workers, junior workers, like Shiori-san case. So I wanna introduce the two cases, the two famous cases of the sexual grooming in the world, and one is that so that I don't explain that in the detailly because you may know that. So actually the sexual the one is a sexual abuse against underage boys in Japan. So do you know that Japanese entertainment? Right, the Japanese entertainment, was a big, management companies, the entertainment management companies of the boys groups, and so Japanese, so the Johnny Kitagawa is the former president of the Japanese entertainment. Then we found out after his death, the survivors raised their voice, disclosed in the public. We are abused by the Johnny Kitagawa. And it is estimated in the 100, the, teenage boys that is abused by the Johnny Kitagawa in the daily basis in the pre-debut, the training courses, So Johnny Kitagawa have so much power then they always make the decision by themselves, So kind of that what he was doing is a typical case of the sexual grooming, targeting the minor is a more vulnerable, the person, and act like caring the father and support their dreams. And so then also he had so much power in the industrial business. I'm sorry, that he was in the entertainment business. So that he always can arrange that to the concert or the TV appearance. So Johnny Jr.'s teenage boys could not have to be silent for about 30 years, before his death, that kind of things. And the one is sexual, and the other one is the U.S. sexual abuse against underage girls in the USA. Do you know that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? That is also typical case of sexual grooming. So okay, I want to talk about the history of the penal code and the sexual violence in Japan. So Yeah, the history of the penal rape code that was enacted in the 1907 Meiji period, right? Then, surprisingly, the Japanese law of the sexual violence has not been amended for the 110 years since its enactment in the 1907 until the 2017. So this is a surprising fact compared to the other developed countries. And it truly showed that it has been extremely difficult for the survivors' voice to be reached to the society by this code in Japan. So therefore, the amendment of the 17th and the 2023, the law, was a big accomplishment and breaking news that gave the courage to all the victims and women throughout this country. So background to the fact that the penal code has not been amended for the past 110 years. It's basically the patriarchal system. So patriarchal system enacted 1898, the Meiji period, and lasted until the 1947. So the ideology behind this patriarchy system is the Confucianism, which is based on the idea of the male superiority. So Japanese most famous animation, Sazai-san. Do you know Sazai-san? It's a very the national, animation. So the introduce, then the kind of Sazai-san that remind the idea of the, patriarchy system and the Confucianism, which means the father is the head of the family, and there is, the fixed gender roles, solid gender roles, such as the men that works and decide, important things in the family, and the women's, support the men, So let me explain about the, patriarch system a little bit more. That, several code of the patriarchal system was enacted in 1989 and ended in the 1975, after the World War II. The ideology behind the system and the Confucianism, which have the strong idea of the male chauvinism. So the government tried to intervene and get control of all families across Japan throughout the patriarchy system, because of the government need a men, for war. And this way to make it easier for the family to send the men out, to the war. So that the code have the several rules of the managing families, includes the family must obey the orders and the supervision of the head of the household, that's male. And in the principle, the eldest son of the head of the family that inherit the family property and the position of the head of the family. And the family members cannot marry without the consent of the head of the household, and the classification of the gender roles, and also wife is a part of the head property, and the property cannot be shared with the wife, and so on. So because of the system, the women that right to make the decision, is so limited for a long time. So then the code of rape. Then at the time, in the middle of the patriarchal system, the code of the rape was enacted. So due to the ideology of the patriarchy behind, the code was enacted to prevent just the male lineage. So the only act that disturbed the male lineage, which means the only insertion of the penis in the family genitalia, was targeted and punished by the code. So unfortunately, those acts were considered as the male problems, which mean that being stolen on the properties and disturbed their male lineage. So background for the enact of such a law was the disregard for the women's right, not the women's suffrage right, and objectification of the women as a property of the men in the society as a whole. So there are mainly the four major problems, issues of this code of the rape. One is a requirement for the assault and intimidation. And the second is a requirement for the formal complaint from the victims for the prosecution. The third is the age of the sexual consent. Then the fourth is the type of the sexual violence applied. That only the forcible the vaginal intercourse on the sexual violence from the guardian is not covered, and so on. So that I'm explaining why these are problems. Those are the problems. That one by one. So first, the requirement of the assault intimidation, 暴行脅迫案件。暴行脅迫要件。Then the code it defines only the act involving assault of the intimidation are accepted or as a non-consensual sexual intercourse, which means the sexual violence. So victims are required to submit and prove the evidence that victims had extremely difficult resisting the sexual activities, for the prosecution or the punishment of the perpetrators. Then for example, the evidence that includes, the mark of the being choked, the mark of the being struggled by the rope, or the photos of the wound and the bruises. So basically only the physical evidence is can be accepted. So it was extremely difficult and for the victim to prove and prove and prosecute the rape because of the majority of the sexual violence that happened in the private room and also with the sexual grooming in the hierarchical relationship. So this requirement, represents the indifference and the lack of knowledge of the victim's experience and the sexual violence. So background of this requirement was the myth of the rape that created by the male-dominated society, such as women must always should be the resist, can be the resist if they don't consent. Or if she didn't strongly resist, she must be willing to have sex or something like that. So that ideas, that requirement of the assault intimidation created based on the idea, and that is a huge gap with the actual victim experiences, which are usually unable to resist due to the relationship and the sexual grooming, Then the requirement for let me explain a little bit more about the requirement for the sexual assault intimidation. So if the victims that want to prosecute the perpetrators, then have a formal complaint for the police and the prosecutors, they have to prove themselves that they could not resist the violence or the sexual intercourse. Then basically, that they have to be interviewed very harshly by the police, the investigation, then a kind of the harsh question and strict question, really to judge that if the victims really could not resist such a sexual intercourse, or the why, So many of all the victims are interviewed by the police, like why didn't you escape? Why didn't you resist? What's the proof? What kind of proof do you have that you resisted? Something like that. So that those kind of the interviews or the investigation that lead to the secondary trauma among the survivors. So that many people, most of the survivors have to give up because of that is too burdened for them. Yeah, then also I want to talk about the requirement for the formal complaint from the victims for the prosecution, 申告罪. So it's mean, to prosecute or to punish the perpetrators, the victims have to keep the formal complaint and also prove themselves, So actually that is yeah. So for example, but that is so difficult for the victim to do that stuff actually, because the victims of the sexual victims, they have the serious damages of the physically or emotionally, socially. So the majority of the victims did not complain, did not even go to the police, And also even if they go to the police bravely to try to prosecute the perpetrators, hash interviews, hash the investigation by police, they're waiting for them, and and also that they have to prove themselves, to prove themselves is extremely difficulty, of resisting the sexual violence, sexual intercourse. Like they have to submit, physical evidence. So, almost of all, victims have to give up, then withdraw their complaint. Then without their complaint, police and prosecutors, they have to stop their investigation and the prosecution. So for about 110 years, the few perpetrators are hardly there are prosecuted and punished, for such a long time because of the requirement. Then also the age of sexual consent in Japan was the lowest in the developed countries, 13. That is I know that is so ridiculously low, And if the junior high school student for 14 years, the junior high school student girls was raped, she have to prove the evidence, and she have to she have to cooperate with she have to keep the complaint, the prosecution, and she have to be the patient throughout the whole investigation process by herself. It is impossible for such teenager girls to do that stuff. And also most of the perpetrators of the teenagers are the intimate adult, like teachers, parents, the siblings, or the the cases is so the sexual grooming, so that they are also manipulated. And they are manipulated, and they don't recognize that, their experience is a sexual violence, And also that is so still premature to understand and recognize that their experience exactly because of the age, So almost impossible for the teenage sexual violence case to prosecute and punish the perpetrators. And also the type of the sexual violence applies is it covers only the vaginal intercourse from the male to females. So that it didn't cover the sexual violence against men, LGBTQ sexual violence by parents, also and so on. So the rape by the the guardian and partners and so on is also not covered. Yeah. So I want to talk about the process in a movement toward the first amendment in the back, stories of it. So that in 2014, the one woman is broke the silence. The Midori Matsushima is a former Prime Minister of the Justice. Is mentioned in the public at the inauguration press conference that it is not right that rape is less punishable than robbery. And society had shocked because so many Japanese people don't even know it. Then don't even know the fact. So due to her statement and the social reaction after her statement, the Japanese government, the government officers started to investigate this problem and seriously consider, Then the Masako Mori, the Prime Minister of former Prime Minister Justice, and Yuko Kamikawa, also the one of the contributors to the change in the penal code. And so basically the female, the powerful, the politicians, push the movement for the amendment of the penal code. So that's not only the politicians, but also the survivors that contribute so strongly to the amendment of the penal code. So the Spring is NPO's survivors group, the survivors organization that was established by the Miss Junko Yamamoto. Junko Yamamoto is a nurse, but she's also the survivors of the sexual violence in the family. Then so that Springs, the NPO was established to only have the political activities to change the penal code. So that they did, actively did the grounded activities to reach out the politicians, so many politicians, to get them know, the actual situation and the importance of amendment. So throughout their grounded activities for about 3 years, gradually the politicians, the politicians change, the ideas of the sexual assault and increase their motivation for the amendment, So, female politicians and the survivors is collaborate each other to achieve this amendment. Then also the society, the voices, in the since 2016 or 2016, the Shiori Ito, the sparked the Me Too movement, and the voices, the voices of survivors or the victims is kind of push the support their political activities for the amendment of the penal code. So then finally, the first amendment was achieved in the 2017. So the name of the penal code that was changed from the rape to the forcible sexual intercourse, and the definition is that penal code includes the anal and the oral intercourse, and the gender of the victims or the perpetrators is not considered. And also the rape by the guardian is covered, but not by partners. Then the penalty is that become the worse. It becomes more harsh. To the imprisoned for the more than 5 years. From the 3 years. Then also the requirement. The requirement for the formal complaint from the victims for prosecution was eliminated. Yay, Shinkoku was eliminated. That's great. But requirement for the assault intimidation was not eliminated. could not be eliminated. And also the age of sexual consent was not changed because I heard that many of many of the powerful politicians, the male politicians, the conservative, the politicians, and also the top of Japan bar association, lawyers association, that have had the rejective and the opposing statement because of the male domination society. So that we couldn't change this. So, but we have the one hope. So that penal code, the amendment, have the special exception. So the government decided to reconsider the 5 years later in the 2023 that if it is necessary to amend the penal code again. So that is a very exceptional exception. And so we have the trial period for 5 years between the 2017 and 2023. And so we wanted to eliminate the requirement for the assault and intimidation and raise the age of the sexual consent. So to achieve this, evidence of the sexual grooming is necessary. Then toward the second amendment. So actually the evidence of the sexual grooming is necessary. So the spring, the Junko Yamamoto-san and the spring team, they invite the researchers of the gender-based violence to collaborate with them to make the evidence on the sexual grooming, to change, Then so, as Dr. Azusa Saito and Yuko Otake are the center of the team, the research team, and myself and Yuki Miyamoto from the University of Tokyo that collaborated with them to support them to make the evidence correctly. And so actually we conducted some interviews with 15 survivors of the sexual violence and recruited from the springs, throughout the springs, so that they have a high motivation to change, to express or to disclose or to tell their stories, that their painful experiences to change the society, So the interview that ask, there are the detail that's painful for the survivors, but the detailed experiences of what happened on the day, on the day, Then the why, how the perpetrator act, perpetrator behave, or the how and why they couldn't resist, the situation, because in the context of the sexual grooming, So, we interview with survivors of the sexual violence, and so we identified, the types of the sexual groomings, and why, they couldn't resist, in the context of hierarchical relationship. So actually the research team, the Azusa and Otake-san published one book, and to report their experiences of the sexual grooming and the typology of the sexual grooming. And also the Springs, Junko Otake-san published one book about her experience being sexually abused by the father at the 13 years old. So the kind of that they published the books, the telling the voices of the survivors or the victims to the society. Okay, so the Springs and the politicians is of course the have did the lot of the grounded the political activities, but at the time there are the evidence that are supported that their grounded activities and political activities, so that they could effectively appeal at the diet. And also the evidence, from survivors and their political activities are disseminated on the SNS. And so the big movement that to push toward the Second Amendment of Penal Code. And the Second Amendment was achieved in the 2023. That we are so happy about this, because then the name of name of the penal code was changed to the non-consensual intercourse, and the requirement for assault and intimidation was finally eliminated. So that we are so happy about this, and also the age of the sexual consent raises 16 years old. Then also the definition includes the photographs of the sexual part and underwear. So so here is a new requirement for the prosecution and the punishment. The following the requirement were to add the considering the grooming. Actually, these 7 are directly reflected by the evidence of the the interviews actually. So the one is a mental or the physical disorder, or the taking alcohol or drugs, then the unclear the conscientiousness, unexpected attack, not time to reject, and fear and freezing and abuse and strong influence due to the economic and social status. So that those grooming requirement are add. Then the sexual intercourse with the victims who have the difficulty experiencing his or her intention not to consent due to these factors is a requirement for the prosecution and the punishment. So it's been the police and the prosecutors that respect and listen the voices, the actual stories of the victims. Then it can be used for the prosecution as evidence for the prosecution and the punishment. Yeah, so here's my final slide. And the history of the sexual violence in Japan, but not only Japan, that's also the world, is pretty much fighting history of the victims and survivors. And especially in Japan, for such a long time until recently, the society has ignored the voices, the victims and survivors' voices for a long time. But that kind of two amendment of the penal code represent, their voices are no longer silent. They actually, the voices that can actually and dramatically change the society. Then I'm so proud of each of those people, those people in the pictures. Then I'm so impressed at how brave they are. Then that's kind of fact actually empower the victims and the survivors and also the women, across Japan. So as a my final message, victims and survivors' voices are very strong. Okay, so this is my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Very difficult to listen to
Uh-huh.
and very important work. So thank you for that. Nothing. Well, so in this room, if you want to ask a question, there's a little cylinder on your table that's red. When you touch the little icon that suggests a microphone, it'll turn to green and then that microphone will be on. So if you would please speak into the microphone, turn it on and then speak into it. That way the people online can hear and everybody in here can hear. So questions, thoughts, comments? Yes, please.
Is it on?
It's on.
Great. I have two questions. First of all, thank you for a great talk. One is I'd like to hear your thoughts as someone who's been involved in the amendments, but also a lot of, trying to capture these voices, the recent sort of efforts to create a like a sex offenders list, the DBS activities in Japan. And I'm curious how whether or not if survivors groups that you've mentioned are also involved in kind of establishing kind of conversations around that. And as a researcher working on this topic, what you think of the effectiveness of a policy or a system like that to obviously, because the goal is to help prevent it from happening rather than just creating more ways to punish, right, when it does happen. And my second question is more about, I guess, public awareness, because the Johnny's incident was really, I think, really pinnacle in terms of spreading the notion of grooming in Japan, while the term grooming, as far as I can remember, like growing up in the US, like I heard that word actually like as as early as when I was like a teenager. It wasn't like a word everyone knew yet at the time, but now I think, but I was actually quite surprised, or I guess maybe not surprised, it's not the right word, but it's interesting to see how like words associated with sexual violence or abuse, whether it's grooming or words like love bombing, like those words don't seem to be well known in Japan, and they're not also being spread or used like on the internet as well. So, and I sometimes wonder if that also impacts individuals, whether they unfortunately become victimized or not, like just kind of general awareness of how manipulation happens in that kind of like intimate sort of, communication or intimate moments with people. So I'm curious like how you think words, terms that kind of try to capture things like that, like impact the ability of survivors to actually articulate the experience that they have, but also in sort of spreading a broader awareness in Japan about how many of these instances are way more insidious than people think it is. And I know those two are pretty big questions, so pick and choose what you feel like you want to talk about.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for your insightful comment and the question. I totally agree with you. And I wanna answer it from the second question. It's more easy for me to answer it. Yeah, of course, yes. The Japanese education system, the education programs, that doesn't include the kind of teaching program or program of the sex education. We have the sex education but its own that the content is so limited, like the features of the male body and the female body or something like that. And so the kind of the sexual intercourse or the sexual grooming, sexual violence is not included in the public sex education. So that I totally agree. It is that is a big issue. I think we want to change it actually, but that's so difficult to change it because the kind of because of the Japanese traditionals, the norms of the sex, sex is a very shameful things, and we can't. It's a private, so that it should be the hidden. kind of things. And so that is kind of difficult, but actually we have been fighting for it for a long time. And yes, and of course the lack of knowledge, lack of the proper recognition of sexual violence and sexual grooming, of course that it affects, the happenings, occurrence, or the violence, the acceptance of the violence, and the normalization of the violence or something like that. Yes, so that it's a definitely the strong effect to the affects the instance of the sexual violence in Japan also. So and also that the lack of education, of course, yes, and the lack of education, lack of the knowledge among the Japanese people, reflect, the kind of is strongly influenced of the survey result, the very low rate of the sexual violence, because we don't have any kind of knowledge on it. So yes, that is very important. And also the first question is so kind of so broad, and yes, as you said, today I talk about the amendment, of the section, penal code, of course, yes, and but the unfortunately, there are not so many researchers focusing on the sexual violence or gender-based violence, because that's too hard. And then, but yeah, so we are Denise and I, and also have been and we have been trying to make evidence that to develop the system and the intervention to effectively prevent the sexual violence, and but the evidence or that amendment is also I believe that the amendment of this this penal code is also that is strongly can relate to the prevention of the sexual violence in the future, Yeah, so right now the Japanese society just started to aware, this problem. So that I'm very expecting the future, change. Yeah, thank you.
To start with, thank you. Question regarding before the amendment, you said that the age of consent was 13, and then, if the survivor were to file a report, would it be through the parents? And then when let's say when the survivor think that there's a lot of stress either publicly or during the process, if they don't want to go, if they want to retrieve the report, can they decide to do it? Or if the parents think, no, this is unfair and I want you to go to the end, fight to the end, how would that be approached?
So your question, can I organize your question to understand myself? So you're asking about especially that so the minors. I'm sorry. So the minors, the sexual violence for the minors.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to
before the
file,
amendment.
yeah, it was 13, right? And then
Yeah.
if they were to file report, would it be with the help of their parents? And to what extent do their parents help them?
That's why it is so extremely difficult for the kids to go to file, their cases, because that they, the perpetrators of the sexual violence that might be the parent, or the, if not, that they are kind of, they don't want the parent to know that because of the shame, and the stereotypes. So that, so
Or the parents wouldn't want them to report
yeah,
because it would be shame on the family.
yeah,
the
that's
family.
right. In the second day, or shame cultures. Yeah, so that is extremely almost impossible that for the minors cases to be executed.
So can the parents carry it forward if the child says, oh my God, this is too much for me, I can't take it?
Mhm.
The parents are standing by his side. Yes, you need to go all the way. Honey, you get out of the spotlight. We're going to carry it. Can they carry it forward?
Yeah, before the amendment, it was not accepted because after the 13, if the kids the aged under the 13, the prosecutors or the police people, police that can't have the investigation without any claim of the victims. That's for the teenagers that the over the aged of 14 years old, that have to prove the evidence, by themselves, that actually, then by themselves. So as a like adult, so that is impossible, once again, Mhm.
And in that case, sorry for the follow-up
Please,
question.
no.
Do they have like the right to have a lawyer? And then what role would the lawyer play in that situation?
Yeah, so that before the amendment you're talking about, yes, yes. So, so the first of all, how can the minors hire the lawyers without the parents' consent? That's the big problems. And they don't have money, they don't have any resources, they don't have the information, anything, right? And but even if the parents, okay, accept, okay, so you want to file, and let's fight together, then but the many of cases drop out from the investigation and the prosecution process because of the harsh interviews, and that their mental health situation got worse, and they couldn't resist, they couldn't stand anymore, and they drop out. Or the requirement of the assault and intimidation. In the many cases of the sexual abuse against the minors, the perpetrators are the kind of the teachers, Mhm. In Japan. It's happened a lot recently in Japan. But so kind of hierarchical relationship, and that they are doing the many student in a daily basis, right? In the teachers, yeah. So there's no evidence, physical evidence, that they can't submit, Then so the many of the cases are drop out. That even if that they can hire a lawyer, so then if they said, okay, so that I can't do it anymore, that I can't. So the 申告罪, the requirement for because of the existence of requirement of for the formal complaint from the victims for prosecution. So the police and the prosecutors have to stop the investigation. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you for answering the question.
I'm going to take a question from and then Mary. This is from Nihal. I was just talking about,
Oh.
this is one of our My Story people in Palestine. She says, great work, Sachiko. You mentioned about patriarchal norms have influenced the development of policies, sometimes hindering or delaying amendments. In contrast, do you see any aspects of Japanese culture, social norms, traditions that might actually support or assist survivors of sexual violence?
So support the
Yeah, it'd be like, I'm reading between the lines, Nihal. So it's something like, is there, because of aspects of culture that might be loving or supportive or nurturing, something about collectivism, something about helping from within the family in some way,
Yeah.
anything like that, any kind of.
Okay, so it is kind of not it is not, it might be not directly related to the the prosecution that
Right.
things. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, private, yes. Actually is I'm gonna go back to this. The comparison between the collectivist culture actually, and the yes, because of the male domination society, Japan, the women's the feel that we are the 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 daily the consciously or the unconsciously discriminated and underprivileged, that kind of thing. So the you know the women support especially in the private settings like shelters, that involve the violence, kind of very the frontline provider settings. The women, the survivors helped each other a lot. And also the kind of the weakness, not weaknesses, but the kind of the they're difficult, the Japanese cultures that have more the acceptance of the suffering or the distress among the especially the women. That's the men is a different story. The men, the male survivors always pressured to be strong, and so you cannot cry. That to be strong, to be independent. So that's they're so difficult to express their their experience and their feelings and help each other. But the women is more likely to help each other. So the shelters, so the women can stay in the shelters for their 2 months, but the providers, the females, the providers, don't expect the women in shelters to recover so quickly. So so they accept, that they are struggling, for a long time, and it's to support for a long time basis. But it's probably different with the individual's culture. So can you explain that a little?
So we're driven by the housing.
Mhm,
It's really about housing. And then when you get placed,
mhm,
most of the support services drop away.
mhm.
And we've been to the shelters that you work with, and the support remains for years,
Yeah.
years.
Mhm,
It's beautiful.
Mhm.
Of course, the toll on the worker
mhm.
is huge because there's just a few of them.
Yeah.
It's not covered by the government,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So their burnout rate is extremely high.
Yeah.
Most of them are also survivors.
Mhm.
So, but they can't let them go
Yeah.
because you care for them. And
Yeah.
that's the only care they will get,
Yeah.
right? So that there's huge caseloads in.
Mhm.
All right, Mary.
Yes, thanks. So I have a question about what research you expect to be doing in the coming years as this law is applied and starts to hopefully make a difference. And I ask this from the perspective of someone consuming a lot of American media and living in America and seeing that a lot of some of the issues that you mentioned, like the harsh interviews and the way that in a courtroom setting,
Yeah.
that list you had of like whether there's alcohol involved and all these things. Like when I saw it on the screen, it looked so simple, but then I know that it gets like the opposition, or I forgot what it's called, they really find ways to make rape cases still not prosecutable. You can't win them. And so, yeah, okay. And I'm struck by how the politicians and the researchers and the survivors, like, we're all part of in your narrative what helped these laws pass. And I've never really thought about it that way in terms of, three groups
Right?
with very clear roles, because I have a mindset of like general allyship, which is actually, like, compared to what you showed, very like vague. How are you being an ally? But what you showed is like clear. This is how I'm contributing in the way that I can, and they all come together.
Of the each
Yeah.
sector.
Yeah, like the way that you have to have politicians, willing to bring these issues to vote, and like willing to not let go of them. And I guess you need to make sure that they stay in those positions. So I don't know, in the US, like you can get voted out by your constituents.
Okay, so
Yeah, so anyway, just to focus on like what research you think that you'll be like pursuing in these next 10 years as the effect of this rolls out.
yes, I actually yes, the speaking the the amendment of penal code, the trial period is over, and actually we are so satisfied about the result, the over amendment, eliminating the requirement and raising the age of the consent. So the spring, that teams, the spring and the research teams is closed already. Then but yes, thank you for that, because recently 2024 then this April, just recently, the new law, on the support for the victims and survivors, for the long time, more briskly, was enacted that is also the breaking news in Japan. Then it is pretty much the deeply related to the trauma recovery, after gender-based violence, and the Reynolds. Actually, there is a government consultation offices, yes, and also the private shelters, things. But the Reynolds, until now, the government, kind of decreasing the budget to support the NPOs or the shelters, private settings, because they haven't recognized the importance of it. So that they try to, for the past 10 or 20 years, they try to build up the public, the counseling office, public things. But the public consultative office or the hotline centers is is a very temporary, the support, So that we need then to support in a more holistically and the long time basis, the empowerment of the NPOs, the private shelters is so important. And fortunately, the new laws to support, empower the NPOs shelters, the private shelters was enacted recently. So that for the next 2 years, I wanted to continue the research to develop effective interventions, effective system to enhance their trauma recovery, holistically and long time basis, So pretty much the Denise and myself, my research, the work is so directed to the role. So I'm very excited. Yeah, thank you.
And I know we're out of time, but also for the support workers. You have a big passion for the
Oh,
support
yeah.
workers, and it's a sort of a standout passion for her.
Mhm.
So those people on the front lines and how exhausted they are and how they're also survivors. So thank you very much. We
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Thank you very much.